Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our series, From Beginning to Everlasting. Last week we heard of how Adam and Eve had to leave the beautiful garden that God had given to them. Can you remember why they had to leave the garden? They had disobeyed God. They chose to go their own way instead of going God's way, and they had to leave the garden forever. Last week we said that there were lots of things to come next that would make you go, and there were. Life outside the garden was really, really difficult. Their perfect friendship with God was broken. They were separated from Him, and everything was hard. They had to work really hard to find food. Things that they had taken for granted that had been really easy in the garden were now really, really difficult. Adam and Eve had children, and those children disobeyed God. In fact, one of their children killed his brother because he was jealous of him. Their children disobeyed God, their grandchildren disobeyed God, their great-grandchildren disobeyed God. That's what sin does. It spreads. God's world was filled with sadness and sickness and pain and death. The people disobeyed God and went their own way instead of going God's way. There was one man who loved God, one man who followed God. His name was Noah. God spoke to Noah. He told Noah that people had filled his world with hate instead of love, and he told Noah that it had to stop. God said that He was going to send a flood. The water would cover the whole earth and wash everything away. But God told Noah to build an ark. Do you know how to build an ark? No, Noah didn't know how to build an ark either. But God did. And God gave Noah some very, very detailed instructions on how to build this very special type of boat. This ark, which was an awful lot bigger than this one, was going to be used to keep Noah and his family safe when the flood came. Lots of people saw Noah build the ark, but they laughed at him. This was a very dry desert area, very, very far away from the sea. And they didn't think that they would ever need a boat. So they laughed at Noah when he said that God was going to send a flood. But even though they laughed, Noah trusted God. When the ark was finished, God told Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives to get into the ark. He also said that there would be some of every type of animal in the ark as well. Animals like slithery lizards, birds with big wide beaks, birds with big long necks, and birds with pointy beaks as well, super slow sloths, and big hairy goats, little tiny monkeys, and great big monkeys, birds with colourful beaks, and birds with colourful feathers, and so many more. Wow, that was a lot of animals. Could you imagine how noisy and smelly it would have been? When Noah and his family and all of the animals were on the ark, God closed the door. Just as God said it would, it started to rain. It rained and rained. There were puddles which joined together into bigger puddles, which joined together into even bigger puddles and lakes until the flood covered the whole earth. But Noah and his family were safe in the ark. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Eventually, when the rain stopped, the ark came to rest on the top of a high mountain. Wow, that shows just how deep the flood waters were. Noah opened a window of the ark and sent out some birds. When one of the birds came back with a little piece of an olive branch in its beak, and then the next time didn't come back at all because it had found somewhere to land, Noah knew that it was time to leave the ark. When he, his family, and the animals left the ark, the first thing that he did was say thank you to God for keeping him and his family safe. After Noah left the ark, God did something very special. He put a beautiful rainbow in the sky as a sign of the promise that he had made, that he would never again flood the whole earth. When we see a rainbow in the sky, we can remember that God keeps his promises. Of course, this story points forward to the day when God would rescue his children from sin and death forever, not this time with a wooden boat, but with a wooden cross. God sent his perfect son Jesus, who left heaven to come into this world that is broken and scarred by sin. Jesus died on a cross to take the punishment for my sin and your sin. He rose again. He's alive today. And you can have your sin forgiven because of what Jesus has done for you. If you're really sorry for those wrong things that you've thought and said and done that break God's laws, and you ask him to forgive you, he will. You can have your sin forgiven. You can be friends with God, and you can have eternal life with him someday in heaven. Eternal life is knowing God here on earth and then spending forever with him in heaven someday. Have you trusted Jesus today? The next part of our story involves a really interesting journey. Who goes on that journey? Where do they go? Come back next week and we'll find out.